Good morning and welcome. Let me share my screen here. I am so excited to have you join. And today's topic for the Course Doctor's First Aid Station, for those of you that are out, let me go over to this on my YouTube channel. This is the first of many to come that are going to fit into this first aid station. Ultimately, the plan is for the rest of the summer is to select topics related to course design and really dig into the quick fixes in some cases, but also how can we actually get to the root of the problems within our courses and what people are experiencing, what I'm seeing, the questions I'm receiving, and this is going to become literally the first aid station for your courses. I so look forward to digging into this. Today's topic kind of deviated from what the original plan was for this week because of a situation yesterday or a training opportunity that there was yesterday, which led to a discussion post, which led to some great comments on my profile. So if you haven't looked at that on LinkedIn, go ahead and join the conversation because here's the deal. I am working through a new program, which I am absolutely ecstatic about, and the content thus far has been absolutely amazing. I got to a part, and even as someone who's been developing online courses since I first web enhanced a course back in 2002, boy, does that date me. But that is, and we can talk about that another day, and I will actually add that as a case study because it is a perfect example of my very first time that I created a web enhanced course, and it was so much fun. So, but anyway, needless to say, that training yesterday was 28 minutes long, and for over 10 minutes of that 28 minutes, they were talking about learning styles. And learning styles in and of themselves makes me cringe, first off, but also it is how it was presented, which is the part that makes me cringe because it was the end all be all of what we needed to be designing for that course according to that presentation. And that's the part that actually really frustrated me because it contradicted everything in the modules leading up to that one. And so today's conversation actually did a little bit of flipping. I initially thought I was going to come on and talk about what exactly a learning style is, why we should be getting rid of them, and digging into the research. They just aren't going away. I actually, during my doctoral studies, I found a post from 2012 where, as part of my courses, I had to take both sides of the argument for and against learning styles and how this was a long-term debate within the field of instructional design. And that was 2012 already. There are many studies out there that will talk about how learning styles have no evidence that they actually improve learning from a learner standpoint. And so that's where I ended up heading with today's talk. So without further ado, let's actually just dig right in here. So you, throughout your education, and even in many of my coaching programs that I'm in right now, I often hear people talk about how, we're getting into the math, but I know that some of you aren't good at math. Well, that's a perceived idea that we have. It is something that sadly has persisted throughout our education system. And even when I think back to when I entered education as an elementary school teacher, and we were using a Chicago math learning approach where it was very circular, and we did a lot of iterations and going around and around. And it was very controversial because it wasn't the traditional method of teaching math, because it was geared towards helping people break this mindset towards math. Because, like anything else, math is a skill. We have to develop those skills. And so for us to just blanketly say, I'm not good at math, we need to flip that story. The same thing is so true. We have people that will come in, and again, on many of these entrepreneurs, when I'm in these coaching groups, my peers and the people presenting are talking about how I'm not good at, I'm not a creative person. I can't do this. I can't sing. I can't play a musical instrument. I'm not a good writer. I'm not tech savvy. I can't tell you how often I hear that because I support people with technology. Even though that's not what I do as the course doctor, I still end up helping people with tech because it's been a part of my life my entire career, even before I went into the military and before I entered education. So the tech savvy one, it's a skill, it's a choice that we have. And so for people to accept this idea that I'm just not tech savvy, it's an excuse. Or I love the I'm not a people person. Now, I personally am not necessarily a people person, but I'm a people person. As I go out for my runs in my neighborhood, there are certain people that I talk to every single day. So to say that I'm not a people person isn't correct. What's correct would say I have limits or boundaries on the amount of time I can spend engaging actively with people. That would be accurate. But to say that I'm not a people person, I personally have had to break that habit. Same thing for sports. You have people that will say, I'm not good at sports. I'm not a runner. I'm not a whatever, insert anything in there. In the entrepreneur space, a lot of people, I don't like to present. I don't want to do a webinar. I'm not a good public speaker. Again, there's a whole lot of I'm not a all that these amount to are limiting beliefs. And for some reason, they have become socially accepted limiting beliefs. Going back to my childhood, I had to break a huge one because as a little, I don't recall reading a book. I don't recall reading out loud. I don't recall being read to. I guarantee that my parents did this, but it's not something that I have taken forward. And I do remember it would have probably been first grade when some of you may remember this. We were grouped into reading groups and they were all named birds. So we were a blue jay, a cardinal, whatever. And of course, I landed in the lowest reading group possible. I didn't enjoy reading aloud. I wasn't skilled at reading aloud. I didn't practice reading aloud. It wasn't a skill that was evolved and grown throughout my childhood. That continued all the way up through my K-12 experience. And I didn't enjoy reading, and I don't remember even reading the textbooks or anything related to school. The reading was not part of it. Now, fast forward to me becoming a teacher. And when I taught the littles, the fourth grade is what I taught, my fondest memories of that teaching time were our dear times, so drop everything and read, where we just got to sit down and read. And I really regret not spending more of that time just on the ground, in my sleeping bag, under a blanket, in the chair, whatever, along with my students on those dear days, because how awesome was that to have a half a day, a full day where all we did was focus on our reading and reading aloud and whatever the case was. I also loved going to the local bookstores and coming back with a pile of books for my students and doing book talks to promote these brand new books. And I had a pretty impressive library within my classroom because I personally loved just exploring those and seeing the students light up as they had some new books to read. And then my read alouds. I loved doing the read alouds, and most days we did the read aloud time. It was always a priority. And research has actually shown, and we implemented balanced literacy at that time. And the homework became, through the years that I was teaching the fourth grade level, Their main homework thing was to read aloud for 15 minutes every single day. And it was absolutely amazing to track the improvement of my students as readers as they started practicing. It didn't matter. They could read aloud to themselves. They could read aloud to a little brother, a grandparent, a parent, a stuffed animal, or a pet. It didn't matter who they were reading to, but so many of them had that preconceived notion by fourth grade that they weren't good readers. They just hadn't developed. I didn't develop as a good reader until I was out of college, out of the military, and into education as a teacher. That is when I would say my reading skills really developed. So again, these are all socially accepted, self-limiting beliefs that we allow people to keep, and we maintain them, and we actually encourage them all too often as they're repeated over and over and over, especially within the entrepreneurial space, in the coaching programs, on the coaching calls, in the videos, all of this stuff. So now, how does this connect to learning styles, and why am I going down the path of self-limiting beliefs? Sadly, learning styles are just another way that we are limiting our beliefs about us as learners and ourselves as learners. What do I mean by that? Well, let's actually define what a learning style is, because conceptually, learning styles themselves are not a bad thing. And that's where, as I started preparing the slides for this and talking it through on my own, I'm like, okay, there is some validity to learning styles, because otherwise we wouldn't keep trying to bring them back. Prior to the terminology of learning styles, we had multiple intelligences. That's what was prevalent when I first started back at college after the military, was Gardner's theories of multiple intelligences. And ultimately, it's the full list of learning styles that I'll show here in a little bit, but it gets into the different modalities of how we interact. But when you define learning styles themselves, it's actually how learners gather, sift through, interpret, organize conclusions they draw about something, and how they store the information for further use. So from a learner standpoint, again, there is some validity to this idea. It's basically a learning approach, and as learners, it is us figuring out how we prefer to learn. It is a learning preference more than it is a style itself, because teaching styles, we have those. And I've actually heard people talk about the different styles of working. I mean, pretty much you add that word style to anything, and it is how we're doing something. So again, it describes the how of what it is we're doing. But now again, I mentioned this at the beginning. We have not found evidence, if you dig into the research on it, that the idea of actually matching the activities to a student's or a learner's actual learning styles, and that it actually improves their learning. I want to make sure that that disclaimer gets mentioned, because according to the research, and you can see here, this is 2020. So this isn't as though this was back when this was first being debunked in the beginning of the 2010s. Around there is when the research started to present itself, and even in the late 2000s. But a learning style model is a small set of learning style dimensions selected to provide instructors or teachers with useful, this is the key part of this, but not all-encompassing collection of guidelines for designing instruction. This is where this has gone wrong. It's just like so many of the different theories and models and frameworks that we in education, and many other fields as well, in the application of the ideas, sadly, they go astray in the actual reality of it. And actually, in another study, they found that when they surveyed teachers, It's estimated about 89% of them believe that matching their instruction to a student's preferred learning style is the preference that and what we should be doing. So within education, this is why this continues to persist. But again, there is validity to the idea of learning preferences. It's just that word style that, because of how it's been applied and the interpretation of it, it starts rubbing people the wrong way along the way. And I have to say for myself, it does ruffle a feather or two as I go. Um, so I do want to present to you just a couple of the commonly used visuals for learning styles, because again, they are good. There is some thought that we need to take with this, and if we use it loosely, and this is where the K-12, when we're teaching down there, we're teaching 6 to 8 subjects. It depends on if you have art teachers or PE teachers that you are sending your kiddos off to, but you're teaching a whole lot of subjects. We don't have time to dig into all of the different subject areas and focus on the best learning styles. So when we're designing our curriculum, when we're creating our lesson plans from the textbooks where they have done the work for us, ideally, we need something simple. We need a KISS approach, so keep it super simple approach to validating and improving our instruction. And that's what the learning styles do for us. And that's why, especially within the K-12 environment, learning styles have stuck around and they are still popular because they present a simple model for us to check how we're teaching. So again, I don't want you to think that we can't keep this in mind, but to stress that people, when they're creating courses, especially in the entrepreneur space, where you're just teaching one subject, you're picking your specialization, your niche, you should be doing your entrepreneurs a service of going beyond learning styles when you're designing that, because there's so much more. But I do want to talk about this. So this right here, I love the Venn diagram aspect of it, but this breaks it down to the 3 spaces where you've got the auditory, the kinesthetic learners, and then the visual learners. And then as they crisscross, you can see where the reading and writing comes in. So you've got that nice blend. Here, this is turning it into a 4-piece pie, and you will see that they talk about the major parts. You'll see in the next one why that's mentioned. But here again, they just broke the reading and writing out from that crisscross part of it, or the overlapping part, and made it an actual pie piece. Here we have where the learning styles are broken into the full 7 list. This again really builds off of the multiple intelligence. If you go back to that research and space, and it aligns with that actually. The most commonly used one is this VARK learning styles. It is a super simple, truly KISS approach version of it. Again, this is why I think in the K-12 space, this is so popular, because it is so simple. And they've really connected it to how-tos. So for example, if you're getting into the kinesthetic space, the role playing, the scenario training, the hands-on aspect of it, we can all relate to that. When I think of the science units that I taught, or when I think about the computer science and the programming, that's where a lot of what I taught fit into. It's that learning by doing. It's that action oriented. When I was in my dad's workshop, I learned how to do electrical stuff by doing. And the same thing with the visuals. That one's a super simple one. So we can see why this approach to instruction is a model that we want to embrace, because it is simple and that's what we do want. But again, when you're not teaching 6 to 8 subjects at once and you're focusing in on your people, your topic, your specialization that you have niched down to, it's time to go beyond this. It's time to actually help our learners get beyond it. And more importantly, learning styles have become just another set of limiting beliefs. This is where we really need to be cautious, and this is why the research is finding learning styles to be so dangerous because it becomes this bubble or it becomes this space where we yet again can say, I can't do this because I only learned visually. Or the one that I always love from my students is, well, I don't learn from lectures. I actually am not an auditory learner. And I've heard these things from my students because, again, we try to help our students learn how they learn best. And that flips it into a self-limiting belief. Hear this one too, because again, I did teach a lot of the hands-on stuff. So the students would have come in and it would actually become a good thing in my course because we were all hands-on, but they don't learn from the reading part. So they would grumble when they had to do reading, which was a big segment of their grade. It's because I would break it up between the hands-on actually, and then the foundational pieces of it. Or here again, I have to have visuals to understand complex things. The creation of the visuals is where the learning comes in. So taking those concepts and breaking them down, not always having them presented to you, isn't always a bad thing. But this is where getting into the strategy and into advanced learning design comes in. The physical part of it, moving around, definitely plays. I know I have my raised lower desk here because I have to be moving. I have to be engaged. If I'm sitting all the time, I'm going to tune out. And many people are that same way. But that's not necessarily a learning style. It's a learning preference. I don't like to sit. So I have found ways around that. And again, here, even just straight up, well, this isn't my learning style. This isn't the one I prefer. So we shut down. We aren't necessarily in the space of a learning style. We're at a point where we're getting uncomfortable because we're getting into the unknown. So this again, helping people and designing around and beyond learning styles is what we need to consider, and we need to start really pushing people to. So what can we do with this stuff? Well, I'm not saying you have to completely toss learning styles. I would love that if everyone did, but you don't have to. I will give some grace on that personally. So there you go. But I am going to discourage people from doing that. But it can be a great checks and balance, especially when you're designing your presentations using these nice visuals. It's not necessarily about a learning style, though. This actually gets into cognitive load. By including a nice visual like my light bulb here, I have actually reduced the cognitive load because I have added a visual and balanced it with the text. There's so many different media theories we could get into, communication theories, but all of those aren't just the fact that you're a visual learner, and that's why this resonates with you. There's so much more to it. But again, checks and balance, great tool, but also are the CARP principles are contrast, alignment, repetition, and proximity. Robin Williams, she has a fabulous book on that, the CARP design principles for the non-designer. So there again, there's the theories that get deeper into it. The learning style of a visual person is just scratching the surface. It's like what we see on an iceberg. Getting into the diverse strategies, making sure that as we're presenting, we are using the varied methods. So if you're going to pick those 4 models, using those just to keep yourself in check, it is a great way to do that. Reviewing and adjusting. So again, making sure that the feedback and you're engaging. So it is a nice surface level check for yourself as you're getting started, as you're beta testing, as you're iterating. It is wonderful for that. However, I'm going to challenge you to go deeper. An easy way to do that, and I guess not necessarily so easy, but a couple Google searches on UDL, or the Universal Design for Learning, it's going to help you go another level up. And it's not a heavy lift. There are some amazing resources out online. If you want some of them, just message me and I will gladly send you to some of my favorites and some of the ones that we in the field of instructional design and learning design use regularly. Backwards design. This is I laugh in the coaching program. James Wedmore is who I'm with right now. And he'll come along with his hashtag backwards. And I can't tell you how much, and maybe that's what made him resonate with me personally, because everything's about, we start with the end in mind. We reverse engineer everything. That's what I have done with courses for as long as I can remember. We always did outcomes based because No Child Left Behind. We were aligning all of that. So from the moment I entered education, it was always backwards design, everything aligned to the end goal. And then you work your way to the front. And that's exactly what I still do. That helps get you beyond the surface level of learning styles. And then, of course, actually engage with someone that's not just a curriculum creator. There are a ton of K-12 educators, and again, that's where I started. That's where my roots was in that K-12. But K-12 educators and the education system, unless they've gone and done other studies, it's about instructional methods. It's about teaching strategies. It's not as deep into the learning theories and learning design. For myself, when I got into the learning design part of it was during my doctorate, when I studied instructional design for online learning. That's when I really got hooked on the sciences and how it's really that art and science of how do you blend everything together. It's the reason I get passionate about this, and as I'm going way longer than I intended here, because I love this stuff and I love helping people understand it, and I love helping see students of my clients enjoy what they're doing and walk away with results from day one. Right now, my summer initiative is about gamification and gamifying learning. And that's the big thing. If we get people engaged, even our entrepreneurs, and more importantly, our entrepreneurs who are doing this as part of their work, as part of their business, they don't have time to sit in a class. They don't have time to do the traditional playing school models. People that I engage with hear me say that a lot because we're replicating, and what I see all too often is replication of a classroom environment. This isn't K-12. This isn't college. This is professionals paying for their time to be enhanced, for the networking, for the whatever, depending on what they're doing. We can go into that conversation another day. So a couple more slides here, just engaging and celebrating. So again, engage from that moment someone hits the buy until they're saying goodbye or they're hitting that renewal button. Make sure that you have actively engaged them from the start to the finish. You're not just bringing them in and letting them fly on their own. There are mechanisms within the course that help them. That's where this continue engagement comes in. So you're checking, you're doing milestones, gamification. This is where that comes in, and that game theory and really getting them to go there, which then leads right to the third one of that celebrate the achievements. Having things gamified or attaching a gamification element to it makes it amazing. People want to do stuff. I fell victim to that during the rise of the digital CEO. And there was a leaderboard and there were prizes attached to it. And the next thing you knew, I wasn't just doing the tasks that got me points. I was sharing to get extra points to go up. And for those that supported me on that, I ended up in spot number 10, which it wasn't the grand prize, but I'm definitely going to take it and I will celebrate that. So real fast, again, not that this was meant to be a promo, but whether it's hiring me as the course doctor or a fractional chief learning officer or a learning design specialist, again, there's a whole lot of stuff to do with curriculum, and I definitely appreciate that. And at one point, that was going to be my doctoral studies, but I wanted to go deeper than just the curriculum side of things and the training side of stuff. So I ended up in the learning design and instructional design part, because we dig in deeper. We get into the performance analysis. We get into the metrics. We get into the science and the art of how people learn. So definitely hiring somebody to come in and do a deep course review And please don't have marketing people do that. Marketing people are amazing at marketing, and there's definitely elements of marketing to courses, but the design of learning, leave it to the experts in the design of learning. I don't try to sell my services as a salesperson or as a marketing person because that's not my area of expertise. I've spent 18 plus, well, 20 years-ish on the learning sciences, on instruction, on how to present and how to do stuff online in the instructional part of it. That's my specialization, online learning, digital courses, learning products, product suites, all of that kind of stuff, and how you scaffold and all of the nuances to that. So please pay attention when you are looking to hire someone. Make sure that they are actually hitting the depth where you're ready to take your learners. If you're looking to go above 500K or into the multi-millions, you're going to need someone that is skilled at the actual learning part because you need to get to the deep part of how to support your people, how to get them to get results sooner, faster, quicker. So they are referring, they are sharing, they are actually making achievements and not just sitting in a seat in your class as if they're paying for a college course that is seat-based versus the competency or outcomes-based. And also, please make sure you constantly have a continuous improvement plan for your courses. This would be ideally quarterly, you're revisiting, or at least each time you're getting set to relaunch. Go back and revisit, invest in a review each time, and keep a parking lot or a task list of things that come up. And again, this is where that external person doing that review can really help prioritize, okay, if you focus on this part of it, you're going to get the most results. So this time around, why don't we make these edits and then we can track and measure what difference that made and make adjustments and fine tune from that. It's all strategic. It is not just random updates based on what we think might make the difference. There's logic behind it. So how can you actually get started? First off, make sure that you subscribe to this channel here. Hopefully you're watching it on the First Aid Station or on LinkedIn. My goal again is for me to do these each week at least, if not more. There's a couple questions that are queued right now, so I might end up in the month of July here as we kick off, just kind of filling the First Aid Station up here with some of those backed up questions. Secondly, I actually just launched this yesterday. I'm in August. I'm going to kick off the course gamification, and it's really about kickstarting that onboarding. So we dig in by doing a course review, and then it's going to be actually 8 weeks of coaching because there's a 2-week implementation and one-on-one time in about the middle of it. But please, if you scan the QR code here or head out to thecoursedoctor.com waitlist-CGKO-2024, you can get on that waitlist so that you are one of the first ones. I'm opening it up just to a small group for this first time around. And of course, there will be some benefits to that, but please stay tuned. I'm hoping here, I'm just kind of working with the tech people to get it launched and finalized, and hopefully within or after the 4th of July here, I will get this thing live and start filling it up so we can start doing some of the reviews. But thank you so much. I will put the references. There are a couple things, so if you wanted to go take a look at those, you can. I will put those down in the description for anybody that has stuck around for this whole thing. I do appreciate that. Hopefully this has helped realize how us focusing on something like a learning style has shifted and once again just ultimately become a limiting belief that we need to help our entrepreneurs break. And we really need to design our courses based on how best to present the content, not on a learner preference. So thanks again for your attention. Please do DM me and also hit the subscribe button or the bell on LinkedIn if you're there. I love to chat about this stuff, and if you wish to go deeper, I would absolutely love that. My inner geek Lizzie always loves talking learning design. So have a wonderful day.